square bracket. Bishop. Article talk. Language. Download P. Watch. Edit. For the scholar and versifier, see Maurice Bishop. Maurice Rupert Bishop, the 29th of May 1944 to the 19th of October 1983, was a Grenadian revolutionary, politician and the leader of the New Jewel Movement (NJM), a party that sought to prioritize socio-economic development, education and true black liberation. The NJM came to power on the 13th of March 1979 and ushered in the Grenada Revolution and installed the People's Revolutionary Government, which removed Prime Minister Eric Gairy from office. Bishop headed the People's Revolutionary Government of Grenada (PRG) from 1979 to 1983. In October 1983, he was deposed as Prime Minister and executed during a coup engineered internally by Deputy Prime Minister Bernard Coard. This quickly led to the demise of the PRG. 1. The Right Honourable Maurice Bishop, Prime Minister of Grenada, People's Revolutionary Government, in office. The 13th of March 1979 to the 14th of October 1983. Monarch. Elizabeth II. Governor General. Sir Paul Scoon Powers Limited. Deputy. Bernard Coard. Preceded by Sir Eric Gairy. Succeeded by Bernard Coard. Personal details. Born Maurice Rupert Bishop. The 29th of May 1944. Aruba, Curaçao and Dependencies. Died the 19th of October 1983, aged 39. Fort Rupert Street, Georges, Grenada. Cause of death. Execution by firing squad. Party. New Jewel Movement. Spouse. Angela Redhead M. 1966. Domestic partner. Jacqueline Kreft. Children. 3. Parent. Alimenta Bishop. Mother. Education. London School of Economics. King's College London. Early life. Edit. Maurice Rupert Bishop was born on the 29th of May 1944 on the island of Aruba, then a colony of the Netherlands as part of the territory of Curaçao. His parents, Rupert and Alimenta Bishop, came from the northeast of Grenada, where Rupert earned 5 British pence per day. At the end of 1930, to improve his financial position, Rupert moved with his wife Alimenta to Aruba so that he could work in the oil refinery. 2. Until the age of 6, Maurice was raised in Aruba with 2 older sisters, Anne and Maureen. In 1950, his father took the family back to Grenada and opened a small retail shop in the capital, St. George's. 2. Maurice was sent to study at the Wesleyan Elementary School, but after a year Maurice was transferred to the Roman Catholic St. George Primary and High School. 3. Maurice was already quite tall at age 9 and was teased because his height made him look much older. As an only son, Maurice was pushed hard by his father to excel. Rupert would demand perfect grades from Maurice. When the family purchased a car, his mother expected him to walk to school like the others. 2. For his secondary education, Bishop received one of the 4 government scholarships for study at the Roman Catholic Presentation Brothers College. 4. He was elected president of the Student Council, of the Discussion Club, and of the History Study Group, along with editing the newspaper Student Voice and participating in sports. As he recalled, "Here I had much interest in politics, history and sociology." He established contacts with students from the Anglican Grenada Boys Secondary School, his own school's competitors. 2. He was an ardent supporter of the West Indies Federation, established in 1958, and the ideas of Caribbean nationalism. He also recalled the great interest that the 1959 Cuban Revolution aroused in him. "It did not matter what we heard on the radio or read in the colonial press. For us, it comes down to the courage and legendary heroism of Fidel Castro, Che Guevara. Nothing could overshadow this aspect of the Cuban Revolution." In those same years, Bishop and his colleagues became interested in reading the works of Julius Nyerere and Frantz Fanon. 2. Shortly before graduation, in early 1962, Bishop and Bernard Coard, a youth leader from Grenada Boys Secondary School, created the Grenada Assembly of Youth Fighting for Truth. It was intended to raise political awareness among the island's youth through lively discussions over pressing issues. Members gathered on Fridays in St. George's main square and arranged open political debates among the people. Both friends and enemies celebrated Bishop's charisma and oratory skills, including his clever use of humor when making arguments. 3. In 1962, Bishop graduated with a Principal's Gold Medal for outstanding academic and overall ability. 4. Education in England. Edit. The activities of the Granada Assembly ended the following year when Bishop and the other assembly leaders left for universities in Europe and the US in December 1963. The 19-year-old Bishop arrived in England to study law at the University of London. Cord meanwhile traveled to the US to study economics at Brandeis University. In 1966, Bishop received a Bachelor of Law degree at Gray's Inn in London. 4. He often worked in the city as a postman or vegetable packer. From 1963 to 1966, he was president of the Students' Association of Holborn College and in 1967 headed the Association of Students of the Royal College. While studying Grenadian history, Bishop focused on anti-British speeches and the life of slave revolt leader Julian Fedden, the head of the 1795 uprising. In 1964, Bishop participated in the UK's West Indian Standing Conference (WISC) and Campaign Against Racial Discrimination (CARD). He visited communist Czechoslovakia and the German Democratic Republic. During this period he studied the works of Marx, Lenin, Stalin, and Mao Zedong. Bishop was particularly impressed by Julius Nyerer's Ujama, Essays on Socialism published by Oxford University Press in 1968 and the Arusha Declaration of 1967. 4. From 1967 to 1969, Bishop worked on his thesis, Constitutional Development of Grenada. However, he left it unfinished because of disagreements with his thesis supervisor in assessing the 1951 disturbances and general strike in Grenada. In 1969, he received a law degree and became one of the founders of the Legal Aid Office of the West Indies Community in London's Notting Hill Gate. This was volunteer work. His main source of income came from his job in the civil service as a surtax examiner. 3. During his education in England, Bishop corresponded with Grenadian friends and developed a 2-year plan of action upon his return home. The plan called for temporary withdrawal from his lawyer duties in order to co-create an organization capable of taking power on the island. 2. Return to Grenada and further political career. Edit. Returning to Grenada in December 1970, Bishop provided legal defense for striking nurses at St. George's General Hospital, who hoped to improve conditions for patients. He was arrested along with 30 other strike supporters. All were acquitted after a 7-month trial. 3. In 1972, Bishop helped organize a conference in Martinique that strategist actions for liberation movements. The philosophy of Julius Nyerere and his Tanzanian socialism were guiding elements for the movement for Assemblies of the People map, which Bishop helped organize after the elections of 1972. Bishop and co-founders Henrik Radix and Jacqueline Kreft were interested in steering MAP toward construction of popular institutions centered in villages to facilitate broad participation in the country's affairs. 2. In January 1973, MAP merged with the Joint Endeavor for Welfare, Education and Liberation JUL and the Organization for Revolutionary Education and Liberation ORAL to form the new JUL movement NJM. Bishop and Unison Whiteman, the founder of JUL, were elected NJM's joint coordinating secretaries. 2. 5. Bloody Sunday. Edit. On the 18th of November 1973, Bishop and other leaders of the new JUL movement were driving in 2 cars from St. George's to Grenville, where they were to meet with businessmen of the city. Police officers under Assistant Chief Constable Innocent Belmar, 6 overtook Bishop's motorcade. 9 people, including Bishop, were captured, arrested and beaten, almost to the point of death, by Belmar's police aides and by the paramilitary Mongoose gang. 7. In prison the arrested men shaved their beards, revealing Bishop's broken jaw. The 18th of November 1973 became known in Grenada as Bloody Sunday. 8.3. Bloody Monday. Edit. Bishop joined a mass demonstration against Prime Minister Gary on the 21st of January 1974. As Bishop's group returned to Otway House, they were pelted with stones and bottles by Gary's security forces, who also used tear gas. Maurice's father Rupert was leading several women and children away from the danger when he was shot in the back and killed at the door of Otway House. 9. The perpetrators were members of the Mongoose gang who took orders from Gary and carried out campaigns of terror against the new JUL movement and against the Bishop family in particular. 10. The 21st of January 1974 became known in Grenada as Bloody Monday. 11. After this traumatizing event, Bishop said, "We, the NJM, realized that we were unable to leave the working class, since the party had no influence in city workers' unions or among the rural folk loyal to Gary. With his colleagues, Bishop developed a new strategy, shifting focus from propaganda and mobilizing anti-government demonstrations toward the organization of party groups and cells. 2. Independence Day. Edit. On the 6th of February 1974, the day before the proclamation of the independent state of Grenada, Bishop was arrested on charges of plotting an armed anti-government conspiracy. 12. He was taken to the Fort George prison. Police said that while searching his house they found weapons, ammunition, equipment and uniforms, along with a plan to assassinate Eric Gary in a nightclub, and a scheme for setting up guerrilla camps. 2 days later, Bishop was released on $125 bail, 13, and fled briefly to North America. 4. On the 29th of March 1974, he was in Guyana participating in a meeting of the Regional Steering Committee of the Pan-African Congress. He also continued his law practice. In October 1974, he defended Desmond, Ross Kabinda, Trotter and Roy Mason, who were accused of murdering an American tourist. 14. Leader of the Opposition. Edit. In 1976, Bishop was elected to represent St. George's Southeast in Parliament. From 1976 to 1979, he held the position of Leader of the Opposition in the House of Representatives of Grenada. 15. As such, he challenged the government of Prime Minister Gary and his Grenada United Labour Party GULP, which maintained power by threat and intimidation 10, 16, 17, and by fraudulent elections. 18, 19. In May 1977, Bishop made his first visit to Cuba. He traveled there with Eunice and Whiteman as leaders of the NJM and guests of the Cuban Institute of Friendship with People ICAP. 3. Premiership. Edit. See also, People's Revolutionary Government Grenada. Bishop in Botzen, East Germany, 1982. In East Berlin, 1982. In 1979, Bishop's party staged a revolution and deposed Gary, who was out of the country addressing the United Nations. Bishop became Prime Minister of Grenada and suspended the Constitution. After taking power, Bishop established a partnership with Cuba. He initiated a number of projects in Grenada, most significantly, the building of a new international airport on the island's southern tip renamed in his memory in May 2009. Financing and labor for the construction of the airport came from Cuba, although most of the airport's infrastructure was designed by European and North American consultants. U.S. President Ronald Reagan accused Grenada of intending to use the new airport's long airstrip as a waypoint for Soviet military aircraft. Among Bishop's core principles were workers' rights, women's rights, and the struggle against racism and apartheid. 20 non-primary source needed. Under Bishop's leadership, the National Women's Organization was formed, which participated in policy decisions along with other social groups. Women were given equal pay and paid maternity leave. Sex discrimination was made illegal. Organizations for Education, Center for Popular Education, Health Care, and Youth Affairs National Youth Organization were also established. Despite its achievements, Bishop's government would not hold elections and stifled the free press and the opposition. 2. The People's Revolutionary Army (PRA) was also formed during Bishop's administration. Critics claimed that the army was a waste of resources, and there were complaints that the PRA was used as a tool to commit human rights abuses, like detention of political dissidents. 21. Bishop has been quoted at length on the dynamics of democracy. There are those who believe that you cannot have a democracy unless there is a situation where every 5 years, people are allowed to put an X next to some candidate's name, and they return to being non-people without the right to say anything to their government, without any right to be involved in running their country. Elections could be important, but first the question is one of timing. We would much rather see elections come when the economy is more stable, when the revolution is more consolidated, when more people have in fact had benefits brought to them, when more people are literate. The right of freedom of expression can really only be relevant if people are not too hungry, or too tired to be able to express themselves. It can only be relevant if appropriate grassroots mechanisms rooted in the people exist, through which the people can effectively participate. We talk about the human rights that the majority has never been able to enjoy, a job, to decent housing, to a good meal. These human rights have been the human rights for a small minority over the years in the Caribbean, and the time has come for the majority of the people to begin to receive those human rights for the first time. 22. An anti-capitalist who advocated a non-capitalist path of development. 23. Bishop believed in socialism one day replacing capitalism as the dominant mode of production, as he noted during an interview conducted in September 1983. It took several hundred years for feudalism to be finally wiped out and capitalism to emerge as the new dominant mode of production, and it will take several hundred years for capitalism to be finally wiped out before socialism becomes the new dominant mode. The struggle is the same with our neighbors. Most people who are unprepared to accept any form of change not only resent it but resist it in very open forms. I think you are going to find that there will be this difficulty amongst some of the leadership in neighboring territories. We think that the key is to get across the message to them that we pose no threat to them and we are not interested in toppling their governments. We are not interested in imposing what we believe on them. That is the first thing. Secondly, we do really want to engage in as many areas of cooperation as we can. I think we have demonstrated that in a million different ways. Wherever we go, we struggle not just for Grenada but for either the OECS territory sub-regional grouping or the wider CARICOM. 24. While Bishop had accomplishments to tout, free public health care, a drop in illiteracy from 35% to 5%, a drop in unemployment from 50% to 14%, 25-26, his weak point was in promoting tourism to the island. 25. He therefore revived the old project of constructing Grenada's first proper international airport, and asked his friend Fidel Castro for help. 25-27. In his role as Prime Minister, Bishop traveled abroad to cultivate relations and to inform the world about the Grenada Revolution. In August 1983, after being invited to the U.S. by the lobbying organization Trans-Africa and the Congressional Black Caucus, Bishop delivered a speech to an enthusiastic audience at Hunter College in Brooklyn, New York. 28. It would be his last international speech. He defended Grenada's revolution, comparing it to the American Revolution and Emancipation Proclamation, and then spoke of the continued economic subservience of the developing world, of the overthrow of Salvador Allende's government in Chile, and the brutal contra-interventions against the Sandinistas. 27. When alluding to the adversarial stance of the Reagan administration toward Grenada, Bishop declared, the real reason for all this hostility is because some perceive that what is happening in Grenada can lay the basis for a new socio-economic and political path of development. 29. According to Jacobin. A State Department report from the time summarized the Americans' concerns. The revolution in Grenada, it said, was in some ways even worse than the Cuban Revolution that had rocked the region a quarter of a century earlier. The vast majority of Grenadians were black, and therefore their struggle could resonate with 30 million black Americans, and the Grenadian revolutionary leaders spoke English, and so could communicate their message with ease to an American audience. 27. Arrest and execution. Edit. In September 1983, simmering tensions within PRD leadership reached a boiling point. A faction within the party, led by Deputy Prime Minister Bernard Court, tried to make Bishop either step down or agree to a power-sharing arrangement. 30. Bishop considered the matter for a couple of weeks, but ultimately rejected the proposal. In response, the Court faction in conjunction with the PRA placed Bishop under house arrest on the 13th of October. 31. Large public demonstrations gathered to demand Bishop's release and his return to power. The protesters numbered as high as 30,000 on an island of 100,000, and even some of Bishop's guards joined the protests. Despite the sizable support, Bishop knew the determination of the Court faction. He confided to a journalist, "I am a dead man." 30. On the 19th of October, a crowd of protesters managed to free Bishop from house arrest. He made his way, first by truck, then by car, to Army headquarters at Fort Rupert, known today as Fort George, which he and his supporters were able to seize control of. At that point, court dispatched a military force from Fort Frederick to retake Fort Rupert. Bishop and 7 others, including his cabinet ministers and aides, were captured. A 4-man PRA firing squad executed Bishop and the others by machine gunning them in the Fort Rupert courtyard. After Bishop was dead, a gunman slit his throat and cut off his finger to steal his ring. The bodies were transported to a military camp on the peninsula of Calabigny and partially burned in a pit. The location of their remains is still unknown. 32-33. Partly as a result of Bishop's murder, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States (OECS) and the nations of Barbados and Jamaica appealed to the United States for assistance, as did Sir Paul Scoon, Governor-General of Grenada. Within days, President Ronald Reagan launched a U.S.-led invasion to overthrow the PRG. Family. Maurice Bishop married nurse Angela Redhead in 1966. They had 2 children, John born 1967 and Nadia born 1969. Angela emigrated to Toronto, Canada, with both children in 1981, while Bishop was still Prime Minister. He also fathered a son, Vladimir Lenin Kreft Bishop, 1978-1994, with his longtime partner Jacqueline Kreft, who was Grenada's Minister of Education. 34 Kreft was killed alongside Bishop by the Fort Rupert firing squad on the 19th of October 1983. After his parents' deaths, Vladimir joined his half-siblings in Canada, but was stabbed to death in a Toronto night at the age of 16. 3. Banner of the Grenada Revolution, located in Grenada National Museum. Legacy. Edit. On the 29th of May 2009, Grenada's International Airport, formerly Point Salines International Airport, was renamed Maurice Bishop International Airport. 35, 36, 37, speaking at the ceremony, Street. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves said, "This belated honor to an outstanding Caribbean son will bring closure to a chapter of denial in Grenada's history." 38. See also. References. External links. Last edited 28 days ago by Zictor23. Related articles. Bernard Court, Prime Minister of Grenada in 1983. New Jewel Movement. Ruling Party of Grenada from 1979 to 1983. People's Revolutionary Government. 1979-1983 Social of Grenada. Page was rendered with Parsoid. Content is available under CC by SAW 4.0 unless otherwise noted. Privacy Policy Contact Wikipedia Legal and Safety Contacts Code of Conduct Statistics Cookie Statement Terms of Use Desktop View.